Hey, welcome everybody to another Tuesday night edition of the Grueling Truths Boxing Show. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. My co-host Joe Rodriguez couldn't make it tonight. He had an illness in the family. So we want to send our best wishes out to Joe's mom. She broke her arm, so hopefully she gets better soon. Another great show tonight. We've got former light heavyweight champion of the world, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing good. I'm doing great. Yourself?
Oh, I'm always great, especially when I'm talking to somebody who, when I was 10, 11 years old, sitting in front watching boxing all the time, you were right there all the time, I think. So.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, I did. That's the light heavyweight division's never been like that since either. But
okay.
You had Matthew Saad Muhammad, Victor Galindez, Dwight Muhammad Kwawi, Michael Spinks, yourself. The division was loaded back then. I think a lot better than what it is today. What's your opinion?
At a given point in time when I was reigning as a light heavyweight champion, basically anybody that was rated from 1 to 10 could have been a world champion.
Yeah, I agree too. So when were you first introduced into boxing?
I was introduced at a very early age, at around probably like 12 years old. The area in which I'm born and raised in, the Brownsville section of Brooklyn, was a bad area. And to this day, it's still bad. And, every day I was going to the store for my mother. I would have a fight just to go to the store and another fight just to come back from the store.
Yeah.
So I was fighting like every day, knocking cats out in the street. But, I knew that wasn't me. But this gentleman that lived in my building saw me fight, and he channeled that into the boxing gym.
What age was that at?
That was at about 12, 13 years old. A gentleman by the name of Jesse Watson. He lived right around the corner from me, saw me knocking cats out. He said, well, you need to channel that into the boxing ring where you can get paid.
Yeah.
I said, well, get paid. Let me see what he's talking about. And, I started boxing and never looked back.
So tell me a little bit about your amateur career. I know you won a couple national Golden Gloves championships. Just tell us a brief synopsis of your amateur career.
Well, my amateur career, I had a pretty good career. 72 was a great year for me as far as being an amateur. I won the New York Golden Gloves in 1971 and 72. I was an alternate on the 72 Olympic team, which I felt and everybody else felt that I beat the favorite, Jesse Valdez, who made the team. The first punch I threw, and it was on TV, a Wide World of Sports. The very first punch I threw, short left hook to the chin, dropped Jesse in the first round.
Yeah.
And I thought I appointed him. But, Jesse was already on 2 Olympic teams, and I'm just coming out of nowhere, basically. And, they gave it to him, and that was the end of my amateur career.
Well, I also noticed that one of those Golden Gloves championships in a final, you beat a guy that would go on to beat a middleweight champion of the world, Vito Antuofermo.
You know what? To this day, that never happened. 2 future world champions that are fighting for the New York Golden Glove title. That never happened in Golden Glove history. Vito being a middleweight champion and myself being a light heavyweight champion. We fought each other in the finals, and I outpointed him. And we became the best of friends right after that.
Well, that seems to happen a lot in boxing, too, though. You see guys like Jerry Cooney, Larry Holmes. I know I had a conversation with Jerry Cooney once where, at one point when they were fighting each other, they hated each other. A lot of that was caused, I think, from Don King. But now today, they're friends. That happens a lot, I think, in boxing, don't you? So,
older, we get more wiser.
Yeah. The older you get, well, the youth anymore is not too wise.
Yeah, exactly. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, nobody gets smart until they're past the age of 30, I don't think, Eddie.
And then that's when everything blossoms out.
Yeah. And then, by then, everything starts to hurt even when you get up in the morning. So what's the old saying? Youth's wasted on the young. So
I heard every day I wake up.
Oh, I know what you mean. So 1972, your pro debut. Tell us a little bit about your first professional boxing match.
Well, basically, I was always sparring with professional guys in the gym. So I was ready. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I knocked him out in the first round.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was ready for the professional ranks. And I was a bit bitter going in to the professional ranks because of what they did to me in the 72 Olympic trials. I mean, it was on TV. Everybody saw it. I dropped Jesse Valdez in the very first punch I threw. He ran into a short left hook, and then I thought I outpointed him, but they gave it to him. So, I mean, there was no more use for me hanging around the Olympics. So I decided to turn pro. And, the first guy I fought, knocked him out in the first round, and I knew I was ready.
Now, I'll tell you, I think the best fight I ever saw you in, which nobody ever brings up, was earlier in your career. I think you were a middleweight. You fought a guy by the name of, I think his name was Mario Rosa, who actually knocked you down in the 6th and 7th rounds.
Twice.
And you came back and knocked him out in the 8th round. You want to talk about that fight a little bit?
Yeah, I can tell you that like it happened yesterday. Mario, he was beating just about everybody, and at that time, I mean, there was a good crop of young fighters coming up, and Mario, he was southpaw, left-handed guy, very good boxer, and he was beating everybody. And we had a place where we all fought at, which was the Felt Forum inside Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And Mario, he had about, if I'm not mistaken, 5 fights. He beat 5 good guys, and I was up and coming, and they matched us together. So I said, yeah, let's go, So Mario dropped me in the 6th round, and he dropped me again in the 7th round. And I knocked him completely out in the 8th round. Great fight.
To me, that is the fight I most remember from your career, which most people will be the Michael Spinks or Victor Galindez or Marvin Johnson. But that fight stood out as just a great fight that nobody even really remembers.
It's been a while. If I'm not mistaken, it was in the early 70s. I was a middleweight and moving up in ranks. I just couldn't keep the weight down.
Yeah.
And I just kept moving up. I kept moving up in the rankings, and I kept moving up in weight.
Yeah. Now, another guy you fought who just recently passed, Matthew Saad Muhammad, that was one of my favorite fighters when I was sitting there on Saturdays listening to Howard Cosell and everything.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the toughest fighters to ever lace on a pair of gloves. You beat him, I think, 1977, right around there?
77 in Philadelphia, his hometown. Great fighter. Great fighter.
What are your recollections of that fight?
What I recollect of that, my recollections, is the very first round, he dropped me in the very first round. And he hit me so hard, I didn't even know I was down. And, all I saw was the referee standing over me, counting. And I'm saying to myself, I wonder why is he counting? And I got up at the count of 8. And, realizing that this gentleman had knocked me down. And we were fighting in Philadelphia, was his hometown. And I wasn't going to let that happen, so I got up and went to work, And I beat him fair and square in his own hometown. Great fight.
Yeah,
you cannot take anything away from that guy.
Oh, he was a tough guy. I mean, almost every fight you never got ripped off your money when you paid to see him fight. Either. Most of the fighters back in that day were like that.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what,
fights.
I didn't even realize that you'd fought him until like a week ago. I wrote a story on Sports France about Matthew Saad Muhammad, and I started going back through his career. And I've got probably 10, 15,000 boxing matches on DVD. I don't have that fight. I didn't even know you guys fought. So the only thing I've been able to find so far was on YouTube. They had like 10 minutes of highlights from it. But
right.
So I was excited to look for
great
that fight.
Fighter.
That was a great fight.
Yeah, all credit. He was a great fighter, no doubt about it.
Now, your first title fight was a close decision loss to Victor Galindez. I think it was in his hometown, too. Tell us what you remember about that fight, and do you think you deserved a decision?
I remember that fight like I said, like it was yesterday. Going into that Galindez fight, he had a very fierce, sort of a Mike Tyson reputation.
Yeah.
And, listen, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm from Brownsville. I don't run from nobody. I run right to you. And during the press conference, I just went and told Victor Galindez that I was going to knock him out. I told him I was going to knock you out. And, I put the fear in his heart. And it was a close fight. I thought I won. What happened was Victor was known to hit low.
Yeah, dirty.
He hit me low twice, and the referee didn't do anything. So I took it upon myself to hit him back low. I hit him in the groin on purpose.
Yeah.
And the referee took 2 points from me, and I lost by 1 point.
Yeah, I remember that. And, the low blow that they took the point away from, was not even a flagrant, was nowhere near as flagrant as what he was doing to you.
Exactly. And they took 2 points from me, not one. They took 2 from me. Well,
they knew he was behind by a point, Eddie.
Yeah, I lost by 1 point. You just suck it up. But at the end of the day, I knew right there and there that I was going to be world champion.
Yeah.
Because
I shortly
beat the
after
guy that was supposed to beating everybody.
Yeah, and then shortly after that, you beat another great fighter, Marvin Johnson, who was another one of my heroes because I was from Indiana, and he's one of the few boxers you'll ever find from Indiana. But tell us a little bit about Marvin Johnson, a little bit about the night you won the light heavyweight championship of the world.
Well, this is going to be crazy, but Marvin Johnson was my roommate in the Olympic trials. He was my roommate.
Really?
He slept in one bed. I slept in the other bed. We had the same room. He fought at 165 pounds, and I fought at 147 pounds. Not ever knowing that we were going to be fighting each other for a major world title. Marvin and myself, we became good friends. But, when it was time come to fight for his title, and I told everybody that I was going to win the title. And I stopped him in the 11th round and won the world title.
Yeah, that was in Knoxville, Tennessee, too, wasn't it?
Right, exactly.
That was the same
March
night
31st.
Tate and Weaver fought. They fought right after you guys, I think, didn't they?
There was 4 fights. Ray Leonard, Davey Boy Green, Mike Weaver. Who did Mike fight? He knocked out.
Mike fought. That's when he knocked out John Tate in that 15th round.
John Tate, right. So it was a great show, and you know what? It was free TV.
I know. I think Larry Holmes was the main event on that show too, wasn't he?
Larry Holmes fought Leroy Jones.
Leroy Jones, yeah.
Yep, it was a great fight. Great. It was free TV. You got 4 world title fights one night.
Yeah, hopefully we're getting back to that too now. So,
and it looks that way. And I you know what you want to say about Al Haymon? But he's giving the boxing people what they want.
Well, I can tell you this. We had Steve Cunningham on the show a couple weeks ago to talk about his upcoming fight with Antonio Tarver. And, he has nothing but great things to say about Al Haymon. He said it's the only promoter that he's dealt with that has actually treated him fairly from the beginning. And, I think the hatred for Al Haymon is you got old guys like Don King and Bob Arum, and then you got Oscar De La Hoya that don't want to give up what they've got, but they're not willing to do what Haymon's doing for the boxers. I think it's a great thing what Al Haymon's done so far.
I think it's a great thing, but I don't think you have a lot of negative coming from Don King. Don King appreciates Al Haymon. I saw, and I was listening to a piece that Don was saying about Al Haymon.
Yeah.
He gave him all the props in the world. And for Don King to give anybody props, he's doing something right. But he praised Al Haymon to the fullest.
All right, here's one thing I always wondered about your career. After you won the title from Marvin Johnson, you defended a few times, then you moved up to heavyweight to fight Ronaldo Snipes while you were still the light heavyweight champion of the world. What was the reasoning behind the decision?
I wanted to win the heavyweight championship. I wanted to be the first fighter, the first light heavyweight champion to move up and win the heavyweight championship. But there's a lot of things that went on in that training camp that, first and foremost, I threw my back out. And I was in the hospital for 10 days without telling anybody, things like that. So, and then Ronaldo, he has a great pair of legs and feet. I never saw a guy that ran so fast in my life. but I think I hit Ronaldo one time, and he felt that I can punch, and he never stayed there. So he just, he ran, and, he got the decision. Then I had to drop about 25 pounds to get down to weight.
Yeah, and that was just 2 months later when you lost your title to Michael Spinks. I mean, that had to be a big impact on why you lost that fight.
That was a big impact. First and foremost, I had to lose over 25 pounds in about 5 weeks. And I did everything. And you got to realize that the fight and the weigh-in were the same day.
Yeah.
Wasn't
not like it is today.
A day later. Exactly. But, I'm not going to take anything away from Michael. I think Michael was a great fighter. I extended him the whole 15 rounds, and I was in the fight every step of the way.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was a one-sided beating. So, I mean.
Exactly. He dropped me in the 11th round, and I got up and I almost took him out in the same round. So I wasn't going to just give up my title. We don't work it like that.
Now, the other question, we skipped over a fight here, but James Scott in Rawway Prison. Tell me a little bit about what that experience was like.
James Scott was a great fighter. You got to give it to him. He beat me fair and square. My thinking at that time was, this guy's in jail. I mean, he's not going to beat me. He don't have all the access to all the equipment that I have. He can't, do this and do that. But I underestimated James, and he got the decision over me.
Yeah, and that's what everybody thought, because I know, actually, I just watched that fight like an hour and a half ago before we did this, and I know Don Dunphy was on HBO before there, and they asked him who would win the fight. He said you hands down, just because basically the same reason you just said that you thought you'd win the fight without a problem. So, and I mean, James Scott beat some really good fighters. He beat Yaki Lopez also, who was a very good fighter.
James Scott was a hell of a fighter. You had to take your hat off to James Scott. And there here's another guy out there. That fight was over. When he finally got out, maybe like about 10 years later, we became good friends.
Yeah.
I even took him out to dinner.
Do you still have contact with him?
No, I don't have contact with him. I haven't talked to James in a while. I know he's out. He's out of prison. He's living in Newark, New Jersey.
Well, hopefully he's doing well. He was a great fighter who never really got a shot because of life circumstances, which sometimes happen. So.
Exactly.
But your last title shot, 1985 against Lobaton Kicker, I think I got that name right, but you lost a controversial decision in his hometown. I think he knocked you down in the middle of that fight. Well, go ahead.
No, he didn't knock me down.
He didn't? Okay.
Here's the guy. Like, going into the fight, I knew what I had to do to win. I had to knock him out to win because I'm in his country. And I know I was an Olympian
too, I think.
He was a gold medalist.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. I beat that guy so bad that he hadn't fought. Like, after we fought, the next time he fought was a year and a half later because I broke a few ribs. I mean, I beat him. When I say I beat him down, I beat him down. You know, they took him from the ring straight to the hospital.
Yeah.
And he wasn't heard of for a year and a half.
Yeah.
If you look
I
up
don't
his
think
record,
he did much after that either.
Well, he lost to Bobby Ches because I already done softened him up for Bobby.
Yeah,
Bobby just
Ches knocked him out, and then I don't think anybody ever heard of him again. So
no, I put a hurting on that kid so bad, pure body shots. That's all I worked on, and I beat him so bad. And the thing about it is, Joe Cortez was the referee, and I see Joe Cortez a lot out here in Vegas, and he took 2 points from me because he said I hit him low. I have the fight on tape. And I wanted to just show Joe, you really, blew it for me.
Yeah.
You blew it for me. I beat this guy with a pure body attack. And I really beat him bad. Like I said, he hadn't boxed for a year and a half after we fought.
Well, and then
Joe
your career
Cortez
ended.
Took that fight.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Joe Cortez took that fight from me,
Well, your last fight was a TKO loss. Was that a hard way to end your career, a hard way to go out, or did that make it easier for you to retire because you realized that it was time to hang him up?
Well, I always told myself, when I first started boxing, I always told myself if I was to ever lose by knockout, TKO, or whatever, where I couldn't continue, I would walk away from the sport.
Yeah.
I got knocked down in the fight, and I got up, and I had my faculties because Larry Hazard at that time was the referee of the fight. He asked me a few questions after I got up, and I answered them great. There was no problem. I walked to him, and he just stopped the fight. And the thing about it is I didn't cause a commotion. I didn't care. I just said, well, maybe it's time for me to quit. But I was beating the guy easy. But I just got caught with a good left hook. Down I went. I got up, and I was feeling good. But Larry decided that, I'm going to stop the fight.
All right. Before we go on, I want to remind listeners you listen to former light heavyweight champion of the world, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, here on The Grueling Truth, NGSC Sports. All of our shows can be heard on iHeartRadio. Just go in, punch in NGSC Sports. Also on Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn, pretty much every app known to man you can hear this interview on. And then you can hear all our past interviews. Past boxers have included Carlos Palomino, Donnie Lalonde. Next week, on Tuesday night, we'll have Paul the Punisher Williams on at 9:30, same time as always. Next Tuesday night, remember Paul Williams. So your career ended. How did you get started training boxers?
Well, I took a trip to Monte Carlo in Europe. Mike McCallum was fighting Sambu Kalambe. Mike's a good friend of mine. So I wanted to go over there to show him support. So I flew in, got me a nice ringside seat, and as the fight was going on, I basically walked Michael through the whole fight. And if you remember, this was their second fight, and Kalambe had beaten Michael in the first fight.
Yeah.
And after, I'm screaming and hollering, telling Mike what to do, and he did it. After the fight was all said and done, Michael had won the fight. He came over to me. He said, man, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have won the fight. It was a top-ranked show. And Aaron said, man, look here, you need to start training guys, because I was really out of the loop for a minute. I was hanging out in Europe, just, seeing what I can get into. And I said, well, I'll try it. He said, you need to come to Vegas. You can start working out in my gym with some of the guys. And that's what I did.
Yeah, so the one thing that was impressive to me was when you had Iran Barkley, who had lost 3 straight fights. You took him to a title-winning performance against Tommy Hearns. Can you tell us a little bit how you helped Iran Barkley turn his career around?
Simple. With a basic jab. Iran, everybody knows, was a slugger. I didn't change his style. I just added on to his style, which was a basic jab, a little bit of head movement, and that's what we did. As a matter of fact, we fought for the 168-pound title. Darren Van Horn, Iran knocked him out, became world champion. The next fight, the exact next fight, we fought Tommy Hearns and beat Tommy Hearns, and we had 2 world championships at one time. We had the super middleweight title, and we took Tommy's light heavyweight title. So, you know, we had 2 titles at one time. So we just took our time and, you know, relinquished one.
Yeah. Well, another huge upset I know you were in the corner for was when Michael Bent upset Tommy Morrison. How did you train Bent for that fight? Because I've heard some things that you did that were a little bit different than what other people would have done. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, basically, I had a pair of gloves, a pair of 20-ounce gloves that Muhammad Ali gave me. And I said, Michael, I'm going to make your hands much faster. So we worked and boxed with those 20-ounce gloves on, and they felt like rocks. And, you know, Michael not only punched harder, but he punched much sharper. And Michael wasn't known as a puncher, but anybody that's 220 pounds hits you on the square on the jaw, you're going to feel it. And we worked with those gloves for 8 weeks. And sure enough, you know, I told everybody that we're going to knock Tommy Morrison out. They didn't believe me. And they asked me, well, what round? And I said, as soon as we hit him. Sure enough, as soon as we hit him with that good right hand right on the chin, the game was over. And he became the WBO heavyweight champion.
So who are some of the boxers you're working with today?
Oh, man. I'm working with a group of guys that are signed to Floyd Mayweather Promotions.
Yeah.
I made Ishe Smith. He's the first fighter born and bred from Las Vegas, Nevada, to win a world title. You have hundreds of guys fighting, you know, for world titles, but they wasn't born and bred here. He's the first fighter born and bred to win a world title. And, you know, I like to say I had something to do with that. I'm his head trainer.
Yeah.
And my latest fighter, where everybody thought he was going to lose, was the Badu Jack when he fought Anthony Durrell for the WBC super middleweight title. We beat, you know, Anthony. You know, we just was too much spirit for Anthony.
Yeah.
You know, we beat him fair and square. So that's the second world title that I brought to Mayweather Promotions.
Yeah.
And I have a whole lot of more guys that I'm going to bring world titles to Mayweather Promotions. All I do is ask them, if you listen to me and do what I ask you, you will be world champion. And that's what they've been doing. So I got them lined up. I have a bunch of super middleweight guys are just waiting in line. I got a bunch of middleweight guys. Everybody's waiting in line for their opportunity to not fight for the title, because anybody can fight for a title.
Yeah.
But we're going to win the title. Exactly.
Yeah. But also, I know you were a part of starting the Joint Association of Boxers, a boxing union. You want to tell me, give us a little update on that?
Well, basically, you know, every major sport entity has a union. You know, basketball, baseball, football. You know, at the end of the day, they got a nice pension that they can relax on. You know, and I'm trying to do that for boxing, even to this day. When, you know, I had it going on pretty good, but when we slipped, when I say we, the United States, slipped into a little recession, that stopped everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was like every man for himself then. So, but a lot of these promoters didn't want me to make that union because, you know, there's a lot of things that would have been brought to the surface of what the promoters were doing wrong with these fighters. So they didn't want me to have
a union. So a lot of people think that maybe boxers aren't treated as poorly today as what they were 30 or 40 years ago. Do you think that's true, or do you think it's just as bad, if not worse?
Well, they're just, oh, man, if you see the fight the other day.
Yeah, I know.
With
the Cuban kid, Gonzalez. Yeah.
With John Pascal and this other kid.
Yeah,
this guy won at least about 7 rounds.
Yeah.
From Pascal, and they gave it to Pascal by unanimous decision. Which fight were they watching?
Yeah, I know. We had Steve Cunningham on, who Steve Cunningham as a guy that's been screwed over probably 4 or 5 times at least in his career.
Exactly. I saw one of his last fights that he was screwed over. He beat the guy, a Russian fair and square.
Yeah, that Glasgow, I think his name was or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw that fight. Steve beat him fair and square. But
yeah, it was like an 8-2 fight.
The other guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, what do you think can be done about the judging in boxing to, get it up to snuff?
Well, this is what can be done, but they don't want it to be done. We have to federalize boxing. They have to, federalize boxing. Once they do that, I strongly believe that we'll have a clean bill of health all the way around.
Yeah.
And I would like to lead that charge, like I lead almost every charge that involves boxing reform. I can make boxing the great sport that it's always been, but it has to be federalized.
So you brought up
United States government.
Yeah.
Has to take over.
But, the thing is this. Hell, over the last 50 years, the United States government hadn't had a lot of success, if anything, either. So. Yeah,
but then again, if you would put them into the boxing forefront.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, it would straighten everybody out. They wouldn't stand a chance to do something about boxing. They'd be scared to do anything that would, make the sport corrupt, because this sport is so corrupt. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You can win 10 out of 10 rounds, but you would lose by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I've seen it happen before. I saw it happen to Pernell Whitaker against Jose Luis Ramirez.
Exactly. But that's how it is. This sport that we're in is so corrupt. Whoever holds the money bags, holds everything.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But like I said, we have to be federalized. That's the whole key. Once the United States government steps in, it'll stop all of that stuff right away.
Yeah, more eyes on them, too, that way. Makes it harder to get away with stuff like that.
Exactly.
So you said you work with the Money Team. What's your opinion on Andre Berto as Floyd Mayweather's next opponent?
Listen, anything can happen in boxing. It's not a given that Floyd is going to beat Andre. He may catch Floyd on a bad night. You never know.
Well, plus Floyd's getting up there in years. You never know when that night's the last one.
This is what I'm saying. Exactly. You're only as good as your last fight.
Well, I think this fight would be I think this fight would be a great idea if they put it on free TV.
I would think so. And then you got to realize one thing. Listen, Floyd has fought everybody. All the tough guys, the guys that's supposed to knock him out or give him a rough time. He fought all the tough guys and beat them. So I think he deserves a fight like Andre Berto. If he's going to go out, let him go out on his terms.
Now, do you think this will be his last fight?
Exactly what they want.
Do you think this will be
his
final
fight?
You never know.
Listen, you never know. They may want him to come back for a couple more fights. I've heard that they offered him an extension, a 3-fight extension. That means the money has to be phenomenal for him to come back. You never know, but it is what it is. But, Floyd, he's beat all the tough guys already until he ran out of tough guys.
Yeah.
So, and then he fought him again.
There's not much left of the welterweight division for him to clean out anymore.
Exactly. They want Floyd to lose so bad. It's unreal.
Yeah, but you know what?
Unreal.
That's a good thing for Floyd because that drives his market value up even more because, half the people want to see him win and the other half want to see him get shut up.
But then they want him to move up in weight. A lot of these guys, they want him to fight middleweight. One guy was talking about him fighting Klitschko. You got to be out of your mind.
Well, and the other thing people forget is this. Sugar Ray Leonard was a welterweight when he started his career. He moved to welterweight, or he moved to middleweight to fight Hagler. Floyd, when he started his career, was a lightweight and weighed 135 pounds. That's
Floyd
a lot bigger
big
move
person.
than what Sugar Ray Leonard did.
Exactly. Floyd is not a big person. Floyd walks around maybe like 150 pounds. Yes, that.
Yeah.
And I see him like every day. And, but one thing about Floyd, he's an athlete. There's very few people that I can call a pure athlete. Floyd,
well, hell, Eddie, if you see him every day, you think you can get him on a show?
You never know about Floyd. I mean, he could be anywhere. I mean, you can say, I'm getting ready to take a plane to Jabip. Okay, I'll be on the show when I get back. Floyd,
well, hell, he can call me from the plane. I don't care.
He's a good guy. Floyd is a good guy. A lot of fun.
Hey, all I know is this. The man's never lost.
That's what I'm talking about.
A lot to be said for that. It's just like people, people tear down Rocky Marciano or Joe Calzaghe, but the thing is this, if nobody ever beats you, hard to top that.
Exactly. I mean, everybody they put in front of, and then the people that they put in front of him, when the fights were close, guess what? He fought him again.
Yeah.
And beat him. And beat
What's
him.
your take on Andre Ward? Because I think Andre Ward is the one guy that's as talented as Floyd Mayweather.
Oh, Andre, he's top of the line. He's the top of the line. Andre Ward can flat out fight, no doubt about it. And when Floyd relinquished his hold on pound for pound, the best out there today, Andre is going to be there to snatch that up. I believe that he is going to move up in weight and win the light heavyweight title.
Yeah, him and Kovalev would be a huge fight.
I think Andre would outbox him easy.
I think he would too, but it would be
one punch, right hand.
That'd probably be the biggest light heavyweight title fight in 30 years. So,
without a doubt.
Because I don't remember. I mean, the last one that big was probably Kwawi and Spinks.
Yeah, exactly. No doubt.
So, but hey, we appreciate you coming on. It was an absolute honor to talk to you, Eddie. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. I really appreciate talking to you guys.
Hey, and you got my number, so if Floyd ever wants to give me a call and be on the show, just let him know I'm available.
You got it, buddy. No problem.
But, all right, guys, that was Eddie Mustafa Muhammad. Thanks a lot, Eddie.
All right, now take care.
All right, you too. Remember, next week on the Grueling Truth Boxing Show, Joe Rodriguez, my co-host, should be back, and we will have on Paul the Punisher Williams, and to talk about his career and the things that happened to him since his career ended. I mean, one of the great welterweights for the last 30 years. Tragically got in an accident, paralyzed now, but we'll talk about his career, talk about what he thinks about Floyd Mayweather. So once again, tomorrow night we will have a San Francisco 49er weekly preseason special. Darryl Pollard, former 49er, will be on with former Niner Dexter Carter, who's the co-host of the show, and then 49er superfan Matt Andrew Scavage, who hosts the show. Then Thursday night, me and Matt will be back with an NFL show. Like I said, next Tuesday, Paul the Punisher Williams on the boxing show. And then next Thursday night, we'll have a special guest, former Major League Baseball pitcher Tommy John from the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I guess we're done for tonight. So for myself, Mike Goodpaster, I want to wish Joe Rodriguez's mom a speedy recovery. You're listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.